Hi, it's Phinney, owner and winemaker of Department 66. I'll give you kind of the quick and dirty. I had a friend, or have a friend, and she had purchased about 5 hectares, which is 2.25 acres of vineyard in this town, MAURY, in the south, it was technically southeast of France, in the Roussillon appellation. And for a couple of years, she'd been telling me about this place and bugging me to get down there. At the time, I was really busy, but the combination of my curiosity and then also I didn't want to be rude because she'd invited me, her and her husband invited me a bunch of times down there. So finally, I think it was March 8th, 2008, and I finally said, all right, I can go for like 48 hours. And I'll never forget, I left the house and my wife looks at me and she goes, just don't do anything stupid. So fly down there, we usually go through Barcelona, and it's about an hour and a half by train from Barcelona in the foothills of the Pyrenees. And we arrived and it was super late at night, so it was just dark because there's no lights out there. I mean, you're in the country. And woke up the next morning and it was a beautiful sunny day. Looked out, I was staying in what they call a gîte, which is like a small hotel, and looked out of my window and there's just this steep black schist rock with vines coming out of it, these, what looked like 100-year-old vines. And that was my sort of entree into MAURY. So for the next 2 days, I spent meeting people, tasting through wines, looking at vineyards. It's a relatively small area, but it's a lot of these crazy little roads. I still get lost all the time, and ended up really, falling in love with the place and the people and the wines. And my wife knows me pretty well, so on that trip I didn't buy it right then, but committed to buying about 40 acres of vineyard. And then I came home and told my wife, look, you can't tell anybody where I was. If anybody else finds out about this, it's just gonna be, it's gonna just blow up. And in fact, that's not what happened. But for about 6 months, I was sort of secretly going back and forth and purchasing more vineyards. By the way, it's almost entirely, shouldn't say entirely, the vast majority of the vineyards are, call it 50 to 100-year-old Grenache, and tiny little clusters. The average yields in MAURY for us over the past, what's it been now, 9 years, is less than half a ton per acre. So you can imagine a light yield in the Napa Valley is 3 to 4 tons. It's not uncommon at all to get 8 to 10 tons in the Central Valley, so minuscule yields. It's been an amazing sort of education out there, and continues to be. It's one of the few places where we own all of the vineyards, and we actually built a winery there, which allows us for, I wouldn't say necessarily more control, but a different type of control. And we can be a lot more nimble because it's all our tractors, all our trucking, everything. So we can, if we need to pick, if it's going to rain or any events coming up, we can be a little bit quicker that way, and it allows us for a little bit more experimentation. But the bottom line is out there is the yields are so low, you don't really have to do a whole lot other than try to get it on the right day. And the wines are so different from anything, any Grenache in California. You just look at the color, you can see they look like Petit Syrah or something. And it is very much a passion play, though. It's a way for me to continue to experiment and further my education. It would be nice if it wasn't at the same time as our harvest here. If it were in the southern hemisphere, that would be a little better. But I go back and forth about once a month during what I call the regular season, and then during harvest it's about every 7 to 10 days, and which actually sounds a lot worse than it is, but harvest is crazy anyway, so it just gives me 10 to 12 hours of alone time, which is kind of nice. So but yeah, we've expanded. We started with D66, which I should back up. The name comes from, France is separated into, I believe it's 191, but I could be wrong, departments, which are, I guess the closest thing that we have here would be, it's sort of akin to a county or a township, more like in between the two. and we're in Department 66. And so the process for getting permits in a winery was much quicker than we expected, and we needed to form what's called a SARL, which is essentially an LLC. And so but we needed a name. And so we were all sitting up one night, probably drinking too much wine, and Sarah Case, whose husband Richard Case is our is our general manager, winemaker on the ground, and Bob Doyle is our vineyard manager, cellar master. But we were having, as I said, a little too much to drink, and Sarah said, well, why don't you just call it Department 66? And it just stuck, and I liked it. And it was very important to me that, you know, with our other brands, we're sort of known for pushing the envelope a bit, but here's this new town of 500 in rural France, and we wanted to be very respectful. It's kind of a funny story. So when we first came out with our first label, and I started to get to know not a lot, but most of the people in the village, after I'd left one trip and Richard showed some of the local folks there the label, and they were like almost offended the other way, because they had gone online and seen what we do with other labels and were expecting something a little more avant-garde. So I kind of got some shit for that. But and actually I have it right here. The D on the label is from, this is a honorary degree. My dad was a professor, and he got this in 1960 from the Sorbonne in Paris. And so that D that is on that makes the D for D66 is, obviously I scanned it, I didn't cut it out of this, but that's the D. So there's a little bit of a tie in there, which is fun. But we have expanded the line a little bit to have D66, which is sort of the workhorse, and then others, which allows us, if there's lots that for whatever reason, it's not even that they don't make the cut, but a portion of them make the cut into D66, you know, we need to do something with them. And other than Grenache, there also is planted in that area Carignan and Syrah. And often when you buy from a family, they would prefer if you buy whatever they have, because that means they're going to probably stop, you know, growing grapes. And a lot of the times it's a succession plan, or there's every imaginable story under the sun. But we started to find that some of those Syrahs and Carignans, we started actually actively looking for them because they were such a fun blending component. And then on top of that, I just found out last year, we're the single largest grower of Petit Syrah in the country of France, with a whopping 25 acres that we started planting. We got permission from the government, because that's one of my favorite varietals. And that sort of goes into the others, you know, hence the name Others. And then we also have Pharaon, which is we don't make it every year, it's our barrel selection from basically 20,000 cases worth of wine. One year it was 4 barrels. I think the most it's ever been is 6 or 8 barrels. And I think we've only made it 3 times in 8 years. And then we have Fragile, which is the rosé, which we're super excited about.